Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cavoukian, and I'm so sorry I can't be there with you live in Paris. I would much rather be there than here, but at least I can reach you through this video. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time at the International Transport Forum of the OECD, talking about issues relating to geolocation data, and that's what I hope to talk to you about today in terms of the privacy measures you can introduce relating to geolocation and mobility data. But I'm going to start by talking to you about privacy by design, because that is one of the measures I'm going to suggest you consider using. And I call it the decade of privacy by design because in 2010, privacy by design was unanimously passed as an international standard by the International Assembly of Data Protection Authorities and Privacy Commissioners. We have an international conference once a year. I used to be a former privacy commissioner, and usually the conferences were in Europe, but in 2010 it was in Jerusalem. And I advanced a resolution that privacy by design be considered as an international framework for privacy to complement regulatory compliance. And to my delight, it was unanimously passed. And one of the reasons I think it was passed, I was surprised, but one of the reasons was because commissioners, data protection authorities were realizing that with the massive growth of ubiquitous computing, online connectivity, social media, wireless wearable devices, that we were only seeing the tip of the iceberg, if you will, relating to privacy infractions and data breaches, that the majority of them were evading our detection. They were remaining largely unchallenged, unknown, unregulated, because they've grown dramatically in the past decade. And so privacy by design is intended to complement regulatory compliance. And that's what my commissioners and I agreed to. And as you can see, we've had great success with it. It's been translated into 37 different languages. It has a true global presence. And not a week would go by that I wouldn't hear from some jurisdiction about what they were doing with privacy by design. Now, there are two elements of privacy by design. One is that it's proactive and intended to prevent privacy harms from arising. The other element is an abandonment of what I call zero sum, which is this either-or proposition. Zero sum simply means that you can only have an increase, positive increase in one interest, always to the detriment of another, such that the two total to a sum of zero. This is such a dated view. I assure you, whenever you have privacy versus security, it's never privacy that wins, and I'm not suggesting it should be, but nor should it be this either-or equation, which is essentially a false dichotomy. You don't need these unnecessary trade-offs. So privacy by design, and as you can see, I just included one quote that I received from Japan, who is an early adopter. The Japanese Information Processing Development Center has embraced privacy by design and embraced what we call positive sum. Positive sum just means that you can have two positive increments in two areas at the same time. It's win-win versus win-lose, and that's what we want to talk about. Just so you know, privacy by design has been operationalized into a number of different areas. We worked with all the major companies in the world to produce papers in these areas to show you that this is eminently doable now. We worked with Microsoft, Intel, IBM, HP, Oracle, all the leading companies. And we're now offering privacy by design certification. If you have any interest, you can check out our website. We've partnered with Deloitte for a certification. They will be the audit attestation arm that will look under the hood, if you will, and make sure that companies are following privacy by design foundational principles. And these are the 7 foundational principles. They are intended to form the base, the foundation of whatever program you're doing. And given that we have very limited time right now, I'm not going to review them, but rest assured that these can be introduced into virtually any kind of operation from the ground up. And that's what I suggest you do in the area of geolocation and mobile data. Because what you need to do in order to use the value of that data, preserve data utility, is de-identify the data, minimize the collection of personally identifiable data. So I always say, this is a shorthand, absolutely yes to big data analytics, yes to open data, open government, of course, but not if you're using personally identifiable data. That's the only thing you have to change. You can make the information as widely available as possible in terms of public data sets, but not in personally identifiable form. And recently, in the United States, the Federal Trade Commission, they cautioned that location data can quickly become sensitive personal information. And privacy advocates have been arguing for some time that location data via mobile devices is, in their words, the deepest privacy threat and is often completely invisible. And that's one of the problems. People aren't aware of what's happening with the data. Data minimization is all about eliminating the personal identifiers linked to the data using strong de-identification techniques, encryption, data aggregation. There are a variety of methodologies available to you. And for public data sets, the same thing. If you de-identify the data, then you can get the most from the location and mobility data you have at your disposal. So what we want to ensure is that you have privacy and data utility in terms of public data sets. And you can do that by de-identifying the data. That's the positive sum win-win equation that I wanted to advance to you today. We've done several papers in this area. I've partnered with Professor Khaled El-Imam, who's world-renowned in terms of his expertise on de-identification methods. He has a company called Privacy Analytics, and they excel at this type of work. This is a first paper that we did, and this is another paper that I wrote with Khaled. It's all about how de-identification protocols, strong protocols combined with a risk of re-identification framework, can enable you to use all kinds of data, including geolocation data. I'm going to end by just reminding you that a few weeks ago, the European Court of Justice invalidated the Safe Harbor Agreement with the United States. So the data cannot flow freely right now from the EU to the US and back. All of this should make the point very clear that privacy has to be strongly protected. And as you know, we have a EU regulation that will be probably passed by the end of this year or early next year, the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. And I wanted to tell you that in this regulation, for the first time ever, the language of privacy by design and data protection by design and privacy as the default, the second foundational principle, are embedded into the statute, the first time ever. So if you follow privacy by design now, you'll be in very good shape to be compliant with the data protection regulation that will be passed shortly. And privacy as the default simply means that you automatically embed privacy into whatever process you're working on, be it involving geolocation data or others. Provide that kind of privacy assurance to your customers and to the public by saying it's automatically in the system. You don't have to ask for it. We give you privacy assurance from the start. And I couldn't resist. Information Age had this article, and they were comparing privacy by design and to the General Data Protection Regulation. And they said it's not too much of a stretch to say that if you implement privacy by design, you've mastered the General Data Protection Regulation. So I thought that was a really strong plug for privacy by design that you may wish to consider. Let me end, ladies and gentlemen, by thanking you for your time, asking you to proactively protect privacy by embedding the necessary privacy protective measures into the design of technologies and business practices. You can do this by embedding privacy as the default setting, automatically delivering this, preventing the privacy harms from arising. And remember, this is predicated, privacy by design is predicated on multiple functionalities winning at the same time, making public data sets available, but making them available in privacy protective manners by de-identifying the data. So hopefully this will give you some thoughts as to how you can protect data and preserve data utility. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.